Oklahoma State is coming off a pinnacle season. They went 12-2 last year. They defeated Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl in dramatic fashion, and they were inches away from capturing the Big 12 championship. This is a program that lost a lot over the course of this offseason. Their defensive coordinator departed for Ohio State to take their defensive coordinator job. He is going to be replaced by Derek Mason. And this offense, can it be more efficient this year? Because last year, the offense had some moments where it wasn't really all that good. And when you look at quarterback Spencer Sanders, it's always hard talking about him because either you love him or you're not all that thrilled about him. And the reason why it's so hard to talk about Spencer Sanders is because look at the stats, and the statistics show you that he was really good last year. 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 62.1% completion percentage, and also was really dynamic on the ground as well with 6 touchdowns and 668 rushing yards. But if you go back and you watch some performances that he had last year, he had some games that he was really good and some games that he was really off. And a lot of Oklahoma State fans defend his performances last year that weren't great by saying that the offensive line wasn't all that good, which I can understand that. But the guy was a turnover machine last year. And there were times where he simply didn't look comfortable in the pocket and his accuracy was really off. So hopefully he improves this year. He's not a bad quarterback. He is above average in my opinion. If he can be better with protecting the football and become a better, more accurate thrower of the football this year, I think that this offense is going to elevate. Now, who's going to replace Jalen Warren at running back? Jalen Warren, his dad, is a huge listener of the channel. Shout out to him. He's now with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Looks like Dominic Robinson is going to end up being the RB1 for the Cowboys this year. 79 carries, 373 rushing yards, 4.7 yards per attempt, and 4 touchdowns he had last year. You lost your best wide receiver, Ante Martin, to the NFL, but you do have Brennan Presley, who was second in the team in receptions, yards, and touchdowns, all behind Tate Martin. You got Jaden Bray. You also have Brandon Johnson, who is probably the fastest player on the squad. He could have a big year this year. Will the offensive line play improve? Because the offensive line was pretty much the Achilles heel at times for this offense. It seems as if this offensive line would never allow the offense to get into rhythm. And Spencer Sanders wasn't really all that comfortable sometimes in certain situations when he was forced to have to drop back and win the game with his arm. So this offensive line definitely has to be better. I don't know if it's going to be better. Depth is kind of a huge issue. They do have really good interior guard play when it comes to their offensive guards. Hunter Woodard, Cole Brenningham were both on Athlon Sports Big 12 preseason team. But when it comes to your offensive tackle positions, you don't really know what you're going to get. And then you look at center as well. It's a little bit of a question mark. But defensively, your linebacker play is probably your biggest concern. You lost Malcolm Rodriguez, Devin Harper. They're now in the NFL. But you have tons of talent and depth on the defensive line. You have Colin Oliver, who had 11.5 sacks last year. Brock Martin, 9 sacks. Tyler Lacey, Brandon Nevers. So this defensive line is really good. They're most likely going to have a good rotation going around, so you're going to have everybody who's going to be getting legitimate playing time and snaps this year. Cornerback Jabbar Muhammad is somebody who could be in store for a breakout year. He played very well in their Fiesta Bowl win against the Fighting Irish. Corey Black also is a name to keep your eye out on for. Safety Jason Taylor II was one of the better players in the secondary last year. He had 48 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 4 pass breakups, and 2 INTs. So this defense, even though you did lose, Converse, who I believe is now with LSU, I think this defense should still be really good under Derek Mason. I think that Derek Mason formerly spent time as the DC for Auburn. His defenses have always been pretty good at Auburn. Their defense was really solid. I think it was a little bit underrated in a sense. So I think that this defense should still be one of the better in college football. Won't be as good as last year because last year was a historically good defense. It's always hard to replicate historical performances. There's always going to be a little bit of a drop-off there. But I still think this defense should be no worse than top 20 in America. When you look at their schedule, their out of conference is pretty easy, okay? You got Central Michigan, Arizona State, and UAPB, whatever that means. So you should easily be able to go 3-0 before you enter your bye week, and then you enter conference play. Now, the Big 12 conference is up for grabs. You know, you look at the Big 12, and there isn't really a team that you can look at and say, yeah, JT, like, this team is it. They're the cream of the crop in the Big 12. You just have a lot of programs that are just there in the mix, and Oklahoma State is in that discussion. They're just in the mix. You feel me? That's not a bad thing. That just goes to show, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to how these teams are going to perform this year. You have Baylor, who you play on the road off your bye. Texas Tech could be an interesting team. TCU. Texas is going to be probably one of the biggest games for Oklahoma State this year. Steve Sarkisian has a pretty good squad this year. They're going to have Quinn Ewers back there at quarterback. You know, I think that's going to be a really fun matchup. I think that's going to be one of the biggest games that they're going to play this year. Then you have Kansas State, Kansas, Iowa State, and then Oklahoma. Oklahoma, your rival. It's really tough when you look at Oklahoma because I have them as a 9-win team. But I do think that their ceiling is incredibly high. I do think that their ceiling could maybe be 10, 11 wins. So I think that Oklahoma State is going to go 8-4 this year. I think that they're going to be pretty solid. But, you know, you don't really know how consistent the offense is going to be still. The offensive line still is a big area of concern. And they're coming off a pinnacle year. And for Oklahoma State, they're not a team that particularly like reloads year in and year out. They're normally a team that kind of has a little bit of a rebuilding phase. Not that they're, you know, stinking up the joint and they're having, you know, losing seasons or nothing like that. But anytime they have a season like how they did last year, they normally come back down a little bit and then they come back up. So I kind of think that this year is going to be one of those years that Oklahoma kind of is going to be a little bit coming back down from the season that they had last year. Could they win 10 games? Most definitely I could see them having double-digit wins again this year. But at the same time, you know, like the offensive line play is just a little bit spotty to me. You know, wide receiver still is a little bit of, you know, a concern as well. Not a huge concern, but still. But overall, I still think that this is going to be one of the better teams in the Big 12 this year. So 8-4 is my record prediction for Oklahoma State this season. Let me know how you guys feel about Oklahoma State going into the upcoming 2022 college football season. And I appreciate you guys for listening to this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. Make sure that you check out the JT Sports Podcast on all podcasting platforms. Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts from, the JT Sports Podcast is available. And I will see you guys shortly with another episode of the JT Sports Podcast.